Hi everyone, it's Lauren. I hope that you're all well. Normally at this time of the month I would be doing a reading wrap-up video where I'm going to review all of the books that I've read in the month of November, but I really have not been reading very much this month at all, and what I have read I've kind of picked up and put down and started and stopped and started again. So what I thought I would do is just do a general reading update video and let you know the one book that I have read and where I am in the other books that I'm halfway through at the moment. So let's start with the success story for November, and that is The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. Now this is a really interesting book, and I don't really know what I was expecting, but whatever they were, my expectations were defied by this book. This is the story of a runaway slave called Cora, and it talks about the Underground Railroad, which was a network connecting slaves in the South to freedom in the North. In this book, however, the Underground Railroad is depicted as an actual factual railroad, steam engines going through tunnels underground. So it's quite interesting. It's not quite magical realism because it's not magical, but it's almost a mythical look at slavery in general and different slaves' experiences, and then also the different experiences of escape and the different characters who would be helping slaves escape, the different attitudes towards slavery in the whole of the United States during this period. So where the imagination of this novel verges on fact, I'm not quite sure, and I quite liked that aspect of it because it's almost just an examination. It doesn't have to be based in fact for the emotions of the book to be truthful. But despite how unconventional this book is, you still really get behind the emotions, the psyches and the motives of the slaves, slave catchers and slave owners in this. You get quite a broad spectrum of people. So definitely an interesting one. From my most successful read of this month to the least successful read, I started and then gave up on Catch-22 by Joseph Heller, which was a pick for the book club that I have with my friends. And I was really looking forward to reading this book because it's one of those classics that you hear so much about, and I'd never actually felt the need to pick it up. I have a feeling that this book would be an amazing film, and I understand why this book is so famous, but that doesn't make it any less difficult to read. This is about a collection of pilots in World War II who are stationed in Italy, and it is just so bizarre. It's a massive cast of characters, and really the first half of the book, I think I got to about just over a third in, to be fair, but at least the first third of the book was just introducing new characters, and it's very abstract. I was reminded, it felt like I was inside a Monty Python sketch or Spike Milligan or something like that. It's very odd. The humour is there, you can see that it's very funny in its absurdity, but then that does make it quite difficult to read, and it's quite a long book. So, you know, after about 150 pages, I just kind of thought, I'm not going to finish this. I'm very pleased that I started reading it though, and I feel like I kind of get what people are talking about with Catch-22. I still would read the film. I would love to hear from you if you've read it, because I feel like it's one of those books that a lot of people struggle with. Everyone in our book club found it like very difficult, even the people that finished it. They were like, yeah, I finished it, but you know, it was a slog. So aside from those two, I'm currently in the middle of 4 books, and the first of these is The Keeper of Lost Things by Ruth Hogan. This is very pleasant. I'm not very far through it at the moment, but it's one of those very accessible, quite commercial reads, but it's still very well written, so it's thoroughly enjoyable. This is about an old man called Anthony, I think, yes, Anthony, who has spent his life collecting lost objects, things that he's found that other people have lost, and he hires an assistant, Laura, and then when he dies, he kind of leaves all of these lost items to her. So how I feel this is going to play out in the rest of the novel is that she's going to try and reunite people with these things, I don't know, but he's also written kind of little short stories about the different items and where he imagines the owners might be and how they might have been lost. So it's quite an interesting book. Lots of different styles, lots of different little everyday, very English plots. And yeah, so far enjoying it, as I said. I'm also reading The Book of Dust by Philip Pullman. I really loved his Dark Materials trilogy when it came out when I was growing up, and I reread them, I think it was either last Christmas, it actually might have been the Christmas before I reread them, and it was just so nice to be immersed back in that world. And that's how I'm feeling with this. This is a prequel to that series, and it follows kind of the lead up. So Lyra, who is our main character in His Dark Materials, if you haven't read it, this takes place when she's a baby, and it's about kind of all of the events and all the political manoeuvrings that were happening up until that point. I am about, I think, 150, oh no, I've read more than that. I'm 236 pages in, and I'm just kind of reading it as and when, because it's quite a big book. This is too big for my handbag, definitely, so I'm reading it at home when I'm in the mood for it. And it's just nice. It's really nice to dip in. It's a children's book, so it's easy to read. It's a world and a universe that I love being part of. So nothing more to report really as yet. But it just feels like a bit of a warm hug, I think, reading this book. Something that is the opposite of a warm hug, and I have been reading for a few months now, and I think I'm just gonna have to give it up and say, okay, I'm gonna stop reading this, is Feminist Futures. Now this is a collection of essays all about women, culture, development in the third world. And on the surface, I thought this is going to be really, really interesting. The problem with this collection is that it's much, much more academic than I realised, and academic in terms of development studies, which I was unaware of and didn't realise was a thing. It's lots of essays written by lots of different people about different parts of the world, and the main arguments in most of the essays I really agreed with and thought was interesting, and they're trying to show that you can't just put your own values from your own society on a completely different culture, and if you see a country, a culture where women are not as equal to men, which they are in many places of the world, you can't just put Western values on top of that culture and send women to work and send them to school and be like, right, okay, we're done now, you're all equal, because that society has its own set of rules and its own set of values, and you have to empower those women to, you know, bring themselves up within the social norms of their society. So that's interesting. The way it's written is so dense and so academic, and I'm sure if you're someone who studies these kind of policies, you would find that very interesting and very helpful. For a layman, it just wasn't there. So although I'm about halfway through, I'm probably not going to pick this up again, which is a shame. And finally, something that I've only picked up the other day, but I'm already about halfway through it, so I must be enjoying it, and that is Eleanor Elephant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. Now this is about a woman who is incredibly lonely and isolated. So she does go to work, but she doesn't really talk to her co-workers. She finds other people very difficult to understand. It's very difficult for her to communicate people on the same level, and it's about her just going about her life. But we also, on reading this, know that there's something awful which has happened in her past, but we don't know about that. And she also then sees a musician on stage one night, falls in love with him, and decides, right, he's the person for me. So it gets to the point where she's kind of borderline stalking him. So that's the crux of the novel. It's very interesting because you have so much empathy for Eleanor because she is so lonely, but also so socially unable to get out of that, and she doesn't really understand why she's different. She doesn't understand how modern society works or how it functions really, and she doesn't really see that she's outside of the norm. She sees that other people are odd. I do want to see what's going on in her past though, because there's some elements of this book which are quite interesting, and it's a bit odd the way it's all handled, so I kind of want to wait till the end of the book and see kind of how Eleanor is going to emerge to me as a 3D person, because at the moment she's a bit of a caricature, but also it's quite funny as well. It's one of these things where someone's idiosyncrasies are quite endearing. So I'm interested to see where we go with that and when we're going to kind of find out more about her. But so far, yeah, enjoying it, loving it. So I would love to know what you've been reading in November. I hope that you've finished more than one book, although it is obviously about quality and not about quantity, and it's about, you know, enjoying your reads. So I hope that you've been reading some good stuff. Do give me some recommendations below. I love to hear what you've all been reading. I'd also like to hear any thoughts that you have on the books that I'm currently reading, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!